To another conflict in the region now, and the leader of rebel forces in Yemen has accused Britain of war crimes in his first interview since he was appointed. Abdulaziz bin Habtoor has told Sky News that the UK is participating in the attacks on his Houthi rebels because it provides weapons to Saudi Arabia. The kingdom is the UK's biggest client in terms of arms sales. Tonight it's reported that the US has decided to limit its military support to Saudi Arabia's campaign in Yemen because of concerns over widespread civilian casualties. And here in the UK, the Disasters Emergency Committee, which represents 13 charities, has today launched an appeal for funds, its first in 18 months. It says the country is at breaking point, with children dying from starvation. Well, civil war has torn Yemen apart. The country is split between areas loyal to the government of internationally recognised President Abraba Mansour Hadi and forces allied to the Houthi rebel movement and pockets of al-Qaeda control. Backed by Iran, the Shia Houthis dominate the west of the country, including the area around the capital, Sana'a, and the border with Saudi Arabia. Sky special correspondent Alex Crawford sent this report from Houthi stronghold of Sadr City. Her report includes pictures of the impact of the war on its young victims.
Yemen's suffering is most raw in its children. At 12 years old, Abdul weighs 11 kilograms, little more than the average one-year-old. Every step he takes is painful, and he's being kept alive by the tube through his nose into his stomach. Two of his brothers are also emaciated, but his family's poor, and they're spending the little money they have trying to save him right now. He's desperately hungry, but he's so malnourished, it's an enormous effort trying to swallow. And he doesn't manage it. His despair and his wretchedness is not isolated. Near Yemen's northern border with Saudi Arabia, they've suffered some of the worst destruction of the war. In parts of Sadr City, no building's been left untouched. The airstrikes, for nearly 2 years now by the Saudi-led coalition, are backed by Britain, America and France. Parts of Yemen have been bombed back to the Middle Ages. The director of this boys' school wants an international investigation into why children's education centres are being attacked.
This is a big crime, a war crime, because this is an educational area with no weapons. They are affecting education. They want to stop students learning.
The boys' school was hit 11 times. The 2 deep pockmarks in the earth are where 2 of the bombs landed. When the boys were moved to the nearby girls' school, that was attacked too. Could British weapons have been used by the Saudis to bomb civilian targets? The Yemenis believe so.
First we thought Britain was a friend, but now we feel the British government are criminals because of what's happening here. They're committing crimes, killing children and pregnant women.
In amongst American cluster bombs in Sadr City, we found a nose cone for the British-made Storm Shadow cruise missile, arguably the most advanced weapon of its kind.
If you open in the middle, this looks, yeah, this has definitely got a UK sign on it.
The remnant was found in Sadr 4 days earlier. The locals are adamant they've been hit by British cluster bombs too. We were shown pictures of UK-made cluster bombs said to have been found in the city and now circulating amongst Yemenis. Britain agreed 6 years ago to ban them and stop their use by anyone else.
He said we have found previously a lot of bombs, Britain bombs. That's why I think so. It is a Britain.
Yemen bomb disposal teams can't keep pace with the air onslaught, and British bombs keep on turning up. It's from UK, he says. The Houthi rebels' new prime minister gave his first interview since his appointment to Sky News and immediately accused Britain of war crimes in Yemen.
باعت القنابل العنقودية للسعودية.
They have sold the cluster bombs for Saudi Arabia.
وهي تعرف أنها تقصد بها مدنيين.
And they know exactly they are going to drop them here in Yemen.
في محافظة صعدة.
In Sada province.
وفي العاصمة صنعاء.
And
وفي عدد المحافظات.
Capital Sana'a and different provinces.
لكن الحكومة البريطانية السابقة والحالية مشتركتان مع العدو السعودي الذي يقصف المدن اليمنية.
But the ex-government of Britain and the current ones are participating with the bombing and airstrikes here in Yemen.
So you think they're guilty of war crimes? In your eyes, Britain is also guilty of war crimes?
لا نحن لا نعتقد، نحن نؤمن أنهم مشتركين اشتراك مباشر مجرمي حرب. نعم.
Yeah, he doesn't think so. He believes that they are war crimes because they are participating.
The war has meant more than half the country is short of food. That's 14 million people. The reality for children is even worse. Faisal's just one of the staggering 300,000 toddlers in Yemen starving to death. But to his mother, he's not a statistic. He's her 2-year-old son. She just doesn't have the means to help him. Ghania's so weak herself, she doesn't react as her 8-month-old baby thrashes around in pain. She's been feeding her little girl on just water and flour. Milk is an unobtainable luxury. The roads are peppered with women and children reduced to begging for scraps from passing strangers. The destruction of the infrastructure and the blockade on imports has been crippling. The Houthi rebel areas and those in them are now running out of cash, so the medics at the main hospital in the capital, Sana'a, are working now unpaid.
You know, since September in this hospital we haven't any salaries. They gave us last month half salary of September.
The UK-educated doctor is now dealing with a significant outbreak of cholera. It's been caused by their compromised hygiene and the widespread lack of clean water. Amongst the desperately ill patients, a boy with no name, abandoned by his parents who couldn't cope with war and a sick child, who's now brain damaged. He's been here for 10 months, being cared for by nurse Faiza, who loves him like her own.
But we don't know what to do. We cannot just throw him. He's a human being. Even he's handicapped, cannot throw him.
As the desperation grows, so does the anger. Thousands turned out in Sana'a to show their support for a new Houthi government. For these people, there's no way back for President Hadi, the man they hounded out of the capital and who Saudi is supporting.
The chants against America are growing stronger, and also is the hatred against all those taking part or even supporting this coalition of bombing, and that includes Britain.
Britain is making fresh enemies, whether or not it's a proxy war between Saudi and its regional rival Iran. Even those who don't support the Houthis now detest America and Britain. This conflict could be storing up dangerous problems for the future. Alex Crawford, Sky News, in Houthi-controlled Yemen.
Well, Britain's arms sales to Saudi Arabia have been controversial for decades, but the conflict in Yemen has become a focus for campaigners calling for a full investigation into alleged breaches of international law. Sky's defence correspondent Alistair Bunkle takes a closer look at what British weapons might be involved.
Britain's arms regulations are hugely complex and very controversial, and in some way that adds to the murkiness that surrounds them. But what is not in doubt is that Saudi Arabia is a huge beneficiary of British arms and has been for many years. So let's try and unpick to what extent that is the case. Well, UK arms exports in 2015 more than 2/3 of them went direct towards the Middle East, and of that, 30% went to Saudi Arabia. So as one single country, they are receiving a huge chunk of British manufactured arms. That equates to £3.3 billion. Only the Americans and the French sell more to the Saudis. And breaking that down, £2.2 billion is aircraft, helicopters, and a small part drones. You then have 1.1 billion, which is the arms, if you like, grenades, bombs, missiles, and a very small chunk, just under £500,000, spent on armoured vehicles. Two main aircraft to take note of. The slightly aged but still very effective Tornado, part of the Al Yamamah deal, and the Typhoon, which is primarily an air superiority aircraft. Both have been used in the skies above Yemen. They carry two particular missiles on them. There's the Brimstone, which is very highly targeted, and then there is the Storm Shadow, which we saw the remnants of in Alex's report, and you can see her leaning over a nose cone as part of that missile in that image there. What about the accusation of cluster bombs? Well, this does get a bit more complicated. Cluster bombs are now banned internationally. The UK last manufactured and delivered cluster bombs to Saudi Arabia in 1989. That was the BL 755. The banning of them is the 2010 Convention on Cluster Munitions Treaty, to which the UK is a signatory, but Saudi Arabia isn't. But as part of their responsibilities in signing that convention, Britain is supposed to encourage the likes of Saudi Arabia not to use cluster bombs anymore.
Well, the Foreign Office responded to our report from Yemen with the following statement. We are aware of reports of an alleged airstrike on a school using UK-supplied weapons and are seeking further information regarding the incident. The UK government takes all allegations of international humanitarian law violations very seriously. We will analyse this allegation in the usual way. This analysis will be used to contribute to our overall view on the approach and attitude of the coalition to international humanitarian law as part of all the information available to us. The statement there provided by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office.